Welcome to my channel, Westpol, which stands for Western Politics. It's self-funded by me, and it's basically just looking at the West from another view. If you like my work, please do like, share and subscribe, and comment below if you have any questions or any other views, or if you want to let me know about anything else. Thank you.
Hi guys, before I get into this, I would like to acknowledge I use three main sources for the research of this video. They are Dr. Rostam Ali Sirat, a research scholar at the Department of International Relations in South Asian University, New Delhi, the book Talking Up to the White Woman by Dr. Aileen Morton Robinson, and the other book that I've researched is The Hazaras and the Afghan State by Nematullah Ibrahimi. The link for all the article and the books can be found in the comments section. In today's video, we'll be looking at the plight and ethnic cleansing of Hazara people in Afghanistan, how it affects us in the West, and why should we be mindful or even care about this. On May 12th this year, while the world was in the grips of a pandemic, in Afghanistan, they were still busy terrorizing the Hazara minority. A terrorist attack targeted at a maternity clinic run by Doctors Without Borders in West Kabul, killing dozens of mothers and newborn children. This heinous attack brought Afghanistan's lack of empathy for victims and the grieved Hazara ethnic group back to the limelight. The Hazaras once represented 60% of the Afghan population. They were and are victims of systematic ethnic cleansing and genocide starting from back in the 18th century under the rule of Amir Abdul Rahman Khan, the king, and to this day celebrated by many Pashtun Afghans as their leader. Then the kings to follow, then Taliban, and now ISIS. To date, the population of Hazaras stand at only 9% of the total Afghan population. Despite decades of war, the people of Afghanistan have a hard time empathizing with victims. Afghans fail to acknowledge one another's plight. This may partially be because they all feel victimized and afflicted by the prolonged war and see no community with special understanding, but is largely and more importantly because of the lack of political will in the government. Collective guilt is a fact for psychologists, wrote psychoanalytic Carl Jung in 1945, and the German people felt a pang of collective guilt for atrocities against Jews during the Second World War. In countries with violent histories such as Germany and Rwanda, the state had taken significant measures to make sure such heinous and communal strife, ethnic cleansing do not occur again. After the Second World War, Germans recognized the Holocaust and worked hard not to let it repeat again. They actively tried to eradicate the far-right ideology. More recently, officials banned pro-Palestinian protests in Germany. This is indicative of the collective guilt the Europeans, in particular the Germans, felt for the historic anti-Semitism and how they continue to seek atonement for this injustice. After the ethnic cleansing of Tutsis by Hutu extremists, Rwandan government is running a member of Tutsis, and all sort of ethnic identity or discrimination is criminalized and banned. The majority group Hutus feel guilty because of the genocide and continue to live under the government run by a member of the Tutsi group. However, a similar feeling of historical guilt is absent in Afghanistan. Afghans do not feel any guilt for the massacres, ethnic cleansing, and violence perpetrated on the Hazaras, which is not only historical but continues undebated. And this is not only just a fact that the Afghans in Afghanistan feel. This is a normal feeling that a lot of Afghans, Pashtun Afghans, feel even in Western countries such as Australia and America. This I'll be showing to you later on. In the 1890s, Abdur Rahman Khan massacred and displaced more than half, up to 60% of the Hazara population, and Hazaras weren't allowed to study, own property or work. But so far, none of the successive governments have acknowledged this modern day slavery. Governments even went a step further, trying to erase this human tragedy from history. No school books talk about the Hazara genocide, and the young in Afghanistan barely have any acknowledgement of the genocide. This process of whitewashing history continued even post-2001. Ahmed Karzai's government decided not to include the jihads of the 1980s against the Soviet invasion and the civil wars of the 1990s in school textbooks, leaving the history of the two most violent decades unwritten to supposedly prevent future ethnic rifts. On February 11th, 1999, the Afshar massacre took place in Kabul by the Mujahideen-run government, which annihilated more than 1,000 Hazara, and some Hazara sources cite up to 3,000 deaths, civilians in Kabul, in less than 48 hours. 3 years later, in 1996, the Taliban massacred between 2,000 to 5,000 Hazara civilians, which Hazara sources cite up to 10,000 deaths in the northern city of Mazar-e-Sharif, followed by two similar small-scale massacres in the Bamiyan province. All these ethnically charged massacres remain unacknowledged in the country's history. In 2010, Afghanistan Parliament pardoned all those who had committed war crimes and human rights abuses. Most of those who had committed these war crimes found a place in the first parliament after 2001. Parliament allowed the perpetrators to obtain clemency and exonerate themselves, thereby escaping future trials. In 2012, the Karzai government forced the Afghan Human Rights Commission not to publish detailed reports of 30 years of war. The reports remain unpublished and no transitional justice measures were implemented. Furthermore, the Afghan government indicated on several occasions that it will issue clemency for the Taliban if the group decides to declare peace. Due to this culture of impunity, the perpetrators feel safe and secure that they will never be held accountable. This may have contributed to the cycle of violence that keeps repeating and the lack of remorse. Society in general, too, has a problem acknowledging the communal aspects of violence. Since 2014, the Hazara ethnic group has come under a series of deadly attacks by ISIS and the Taliban, but the government has never acknowledged this communal aspect and has not taken any specific measures to stop the particular victimization of Hazaras in many of these violent attacks. The people in general and the young generation in particular remain oblivious and have no sympathy, let alone empathy, towards the Hazaras. Not only do the non-Hazara communities fail to sympathize, they condone and at times celebrate the violence that is perpetrated on this minority. That could also be true to some extent about the Hazara ethnic group's capability of empathizing with other ethnic groups, further exacerbating this problem in the absence of a discussion on communal violence in textbooks. To initiate an informed decision on the violent past, the government could officially recognize the Hazara ethnic cleansing and insert this violence into textbooks. Furthermore, the Hazara people have fled Afghanistan as refugees and are living in Western countries, not only feeling helpless, but still most cling to the idea that they are Afghan. The word Afghan is used to describe the ethnics called Pashtuns, whom are in majority and whom are in direct conflict with the Hazaras. An example of this in the West could be, let's imagine that we live in a country called Whiteistan, and in this country to date other minorities are being wiped off. Can you imagine, let's say as a black person, minority group in a country like this called Whiteistan, feel that you're Whiteistani, that you belong in this country? In other words, this country represents you? Unfortunately, most Hazara people to this day identify themselves as Afghani, even though they were born in other countries and have since moved on to a third country. Most Afghan businesses in Australia are in actual fact created, owned and run by Hazara people. This sort of thinking has been coined by German philosopher, cultural critic and philologist Friedrich Wilhelm Nietzsche as master-slave morality. In Nietzsche's slavery morality, a slave or an othered group in society could be having the mentality of feeling inferior to the rest and would try their best to fit in. This can be described as the omega, the outer, the ones that try to please the rest in order to be accepted. The Pashtuns then, it can be clearly said, are privileged. Let's call this Pashtun privileged. The problem here is the first generation Pashtuns that are born in Western countries still have Pashtun privilege. This master morality, this thinking that they are better and above the cockroach-like Hazaras. This Pashtun privilege, this racist view is still quite prevalent in the Pashtuns in the West. I have worked with many in the Afghan community, both with the Pashtuns and Hazara background. It amazes me to see how many young Pashtuns whom are born here in Australia not only have a racist view towards Hazaras, but have a real agenda towards them. An agenda where they are looking to destroy, rape, and play around with as many Hazara women as they can. This is an intergenerational conditioning that has been done, and it is not gender biased either. For instance, recently a first-generation American-born Afghan girl by the name of Feroza Aziz got very famous due to a video going viral in which she draws attention to the plight of Uyghur Muslims in China by doing her eyes and covering it up. Mrs. Aziz spoke about how TikTok removed her videos and blocked her due to her voicing the genocide of Uyghur Muslims. If you look at her account or Twitter or Instagram or on social media, she's quite vocal about Muslims being killed all over the world. In fact, her Instagram headline states, quote, official account of Feroza Aziz, human rights activist, save humanity. Your silence is deafening, end quote. Another thing that she's very vocal about is white privilege. Very recently, I posted something that brought attention to her Pashtun privilege, the genocide of the Hazaras, which she never talks about, and I advised her to check her privilege before jumping on others, which I thought is quite significant for someone who's championing themselves as a human rights activist, who's saying to others to save humanity, that their silence is deafening to her. You know, it's really, I can feel her passion about this. Someone who's really passionate about this should know something close to home. So if let's say you're living in a house with a shared couple, and or with your mum and dad, or with your brother who's hitting his wife, instead of talking to him about that, Are you going to jump 10 streets down at another house and be like, that guy is doing this? That's hypocritical. So anyways, I put this comment on her account. I did not swear. I was not rude in any way. However, I was blocked from her account and my comment was deleted immediately. How is this any different to the way she claims TikTok dealt with her? This is not only a perfect example of a hypocrite, a leftist view of silencing others and the cancel culture, but also the racist views that Pashtuns have towards the Hazaras, even if they are born here in the West. I mean, if you look at her social media profile, it's full of self-righteous views on how white people need to do this and apologize, and how dumb white girls are using real black songs in the wrong way, and how they don't know and they don't understand their culture, and how the Chinese government is doing this and doing that. However, when it comes to the plight and genocide of Hazaras at the hands of her people, not only is she silent, but she is doing the silencing. This silence and silencing is reiterated not only on an individual level, as I have shown to you in my example, but also on a societal and a macro level, where there is no awareness about the genocide of Hazaras and the silencing of this by various other Muslim countries. The Hazara people are not seen as Muslims by the majority Sunni and Wahhabis, as the Hazaras follow a slightly different sect of Islam. This indifference and silencing is not only wrong, hypocritical, but also anti-Islam and against the teachings of the Holy Prophet of Islam, peace be upon him. This way of thinking is against Islam, as Islam itself is a self-reflective religion where a person is encouraged to concentrate with the betterment of oneself rather than worrying about others. There is a saying in Islam that once you die and stand before God on Judgment Day, you're going to be worried about your deeds so much that you're going to forget who's your mother, who's your father, even if you see them. So what entails it for myself is Islam is teaching these Muslims not to worry about others. Are you perfect? If you're not perfect, worry about yourself. In conclusion, what I believe is the way forward for Hazara people is to have their own autonomous and free country, as they are significantly different to Afghans, not only in their facial features, but also in their religious beliefs, the way they deal with their women and the way they educate their women, but most importantly, they're culturally very different. In the West, we can be aware of these sorts of biases and work towards a fair and equal society that listens to the views of one another and not call out white people on their privilege all the time. This is just going to create hate and division between community. Be aware of yourself, be aware of what you're doing, and worry about yourself. The more we worry about ourselves and make ourselves perfect, the better society is going to be. I hope you guys enjoyed this, and I hope you guys would share this around and spread the word about the Hazara plight and their genocide, and I hope it helped you guys in one way or another. Let me know in the comment section what you thought about this, and also give it a like and subscribe if you liked it. Thank you. Take good care. Bye-bye.